South Africa entered recession in the second quarter for the first time since 2009 last week. Statistics South Africa said the economy contracted by 0.7% in the second quarter, led by declines in the agricultural, transport and retail sectors. For more on this, I'm joined in studio by Tinyiko Ngwenya and Irvin Jim, who's the GS of Numsa. Thanks both so much for your time. Tinyiko, perhaps I'll start with you. What effect will this recession have on South African consumers?
Well, it's no secret that the economy is quite weak, and we saw that with the shock GDP numbers. And just generally in terms of the consumers, I worry because we saw household spending declining. And the thing is, when you have a weak economy, corporates are not earning enough in order to, employ a bit more people and help with the employment crisis that we have. So what we're seeing is a lot of job losses because cost reduction strategies are going to happen now in this weak economic environment. So with consumers, if they're not earning, then it's very tough to spend. It's very tough to make ends meet. So the consumer is under a lot of pressure in terms of just earnings generally. It's also a stage where we have a weak currency because of the international factors with US interest rates rising, etc. And that currency impact is now starting to worry the Reserve Bank, and they're now thinking about whether they should be tightening policy. And tightening policy in a weak environment is very difficult. That will add more pressure onto the consumer.
So it's not good news for workers from what Tinyiko is saying. What solutions do you propose to get us out of the recession and for workers as well?
Well, I think great problems should always deliver great solutions. I think our starting point is that the working class in general, we're talking about the economy because it has underperformed for 2 quarters. And I think for the working class in general, they have been in a crisis, poverty, unemployment and inequalities. I think it's time for drastic measures. I think we need an expansionary budget. We need a stimulus, not the small amounts that I hear people talking about. But I think we need to go back to basic and accept that the kind of policy direction that we've taken for the past 2 decades, it has not been socialist policies. It has failed. It has plunged us to where we are. And we think that it's high time that the state must go back and intervene in the economy and make sure that all commanding heights of the economy are basically such as SOEs are being utilized to champion localization and stop dumping. And I think it's time to revisit tariffs, increase them, designate, make sure that you stimulate economic growth and pay workers well so that they could have buying power. And if you do so, because I think we're against all odds. Trump have just decided to impose duties against our steel, against our own aluminium. And what are we going to do? I guess the forest to run to is to build the South African economy, the state basically. We should go back to what the Nationalist Party, I'm afraid to say so. It used to have a maize board, wool board, state-led agricultural sector where the state was basically intervening. We need to get rid of these tenders that are associated and inherently they are accompanied by corruption and where the state basically become the employer of the last resort.
What do you think of these solutions that are being proposed, and especially with a look at the stimulus package, which the ANC has said government needs to look at in order to give our economy a kickstart?
So it is the textbook solution. Usually when we're in environments where we have a weak economy, the government needs to step in and start investing in infrastructure projects, try to reduce the transportation costs of businesses with driving cost efficiencies, etc. But unfortunately, we're at a stage where government is really fiscally constrained. And we have the Moody's, the rating agencies watching us like hawks in terms of what our next steps are going to be. So when it comes to a fiscal stimulus that we really, really need, it's unfortunate that we're in this dire situation where we're constrained and we have to tighten our belts instead of spending a bit more. So in terms of then what else can we do? And this is where we rely on private investment. I hate singing the same song, but private investment is really where we need to start looking. And that's why Cyril Ramaphosa is going to speak to China. Last week he was there trying to build, this fiscal stimulus package of that 1.3 trillion rand in order for us to try and boost this economy, because unfortunately government is fiscally constrained. One move and we lose our investment rating grade. So we have to start looking at private investment to boost the economy.
So the solutions that you're both discussing are quite long-term, going to take quite a while to kick in. Is there anything we can do in the short term to try and fix this recession and also, like the finance minister was saying to South Africans, make sure people don't panic?
I think if we were just to protect Eskom from being broken up, privatize, I'm saying no to privatization of Eskom, make sure that it delivers cheap, competitive electricity tariff to small, medium-sized companies and big companies. That will be the starting point, and move away from what is being hatched as an agenda to basically destroy Eskom, hand it over to renewables, who are basically making a kill out of it at the expense of the economy and the electrification of the country.
But the problem, and you've mentioned it, is that state-owned entities are not doing well. They are burdened with debt. They are seeing hundreds of millions of rands worth of losses. And people are saying that perhaps privatization is a solution to get out of this and to save the country money.
Well, my understanding of any capitalist who decide to invest, they don't come from anywhere else. It's people who would have made money and they check where else can they make money. If they are to take a decision to invest in our SOEs, it will be how much money can they make, how much profits can be able to maximize, and as they maximize those profits, the cost of electricity will shoot up. And therefore, we will suffer as the economy, we will suffer the program to electrify our country. I don't support privatization. I think if you go to UK, they would have privatized their rail networks and everything else. They are trying to run away from that particular self-imposed crisis on their side.
When we were talking about the stimulus package, when our unemployment results came out and we saw that our unemployment is about 27.2%, that's when that stimulus package conversation started coming to the fore more. Do we also then need to take a look at how we work? Because when we're speaking about coal industries and perhaps older industries, people are saying artificial intelligence is here. We need to be having conversations around how we work. We need to be upskilling South Africans, and we need to be focusing more on the fourth industrial revolution than the current modes of work we have now.
Yeah, I think before we start looking at the fourth industrial revolution, we need to understand right now that staff productivity is actually being affected by the fact that consumers are under a lot of financial constraints. So Alexander Forbes did a study last year, and they found that employers are actually losing 35% of their payroll as a consequence of, the consumer being impaired by the fact that, they have financial constraints. So in terms of staff productivity, it's very much linked to the fact that, we're very much indebted. In fact, lenders owe about 1.6 trillion, or rather consumers owe 1.6 trillion to lenders in South Africa. So we're really over indebted. I think we need to start solving that. Already we have that debt relief program that's now sitting with Parliament in terms of that National Credit Amendment Bill. And that is perhaps one way we can help in terms of debt forgiveness of these vulnerable consumers. So we need to start with that. Maybe financial wellness programs as well being run by these corporates to try and assist with that.
Well, I think if you're looking at Eskom, the simple thing, I think all of us, nobody would disagree that we do need to have an energy mix, but I think it must come at a cost which the country can be able to afford. I mean, what's the point of just connecting IPPs? That, for instance, in Mpumalanga, I mean, for the past 2 years, we would have lost thousands of jobs. The country have deindustrialized, and if you connected 27 IPPs now, 92,000 jobs will be lost at Eskom, and that province will become a ghost town. And what is going to happen to those people? They're going to move into Johannesburg looking for job opportunities, and again, our squatter camps and everything else is going to escalate.
Thanks both so much for your time. I think it's a conversation that we need to continue having.